The snow fell softly outside the Frost family's secluded cabin in the woods of Vermont. It was Christmas Eve, and the family of four, parents Mark and Sarah, their teenage daughter Emily, and their young son Tommy, had gathered for their annual holiday retreat. The cabin was cozy, adorned with twinkling lights, a crackling fireplace, and the scent of pine from the freshly cut tree. But this year, something felt off. The day had started normally enough. They'd baked cookies, sang carols, and even built a snowman in the front yard. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, an eerie silence settled over the forest. The wind, which had been howling all afternoon, suddenly stopped. The only sound was the faint ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner of the living room. "Did you hear that?" Emily asked, her voice trembling as she looked up from her phone. "Hear what?" Mark replied, glancing up from the book he was reading. "It sounded like footsteps." "Outside," she said, her eyes darting toward the window. Mark chuckled. "Probably just an animal, sweetheart. Nothing to worry about." But Emily wasn't convinced. She'd been feeling uneasy all day, like they were being watched. She'd brushed it off as her imagination, but now she wasn't so sure. As the night wore on, the feeling of unease grew. Tommy, who had been playing with his new toy train, suddenly froze, his eyes wide with fear. "Mommy, there's someone outside," he whispered, pointing toward the window. Sarah knelt beside him, trying to soothe him. "It's just the snow, honey. Nothing to be scared of." But then they all heard it, a faint knocking at the door. Mark stood up, his brow furrowed. Who could that be? We're miles from anyone. He grabbed the fireplace poker and cautiously approached the door. The knocking grew louder, more insistent. "Who's there?" Mark called out, his voice steady but laced with tension. There was no answer, just the sound of the wind picking up again, howling through the trees. Mark opened the door a crack, peering out into the darkness. The porch was empty, but the snow was disturbed, as if someone or something had been standing there. "Probably just the wind," Mark said, closing the door and locking it. But even he didn't sound convinced. The family tried to shake off the incident, but the atmosphere in the cabin had shifted. The once cozy space now felt claustrophobic, the shadows from the firelight dancing ominously on the walls. As they sat down for dinner, the knocking started again, this time at the windows. Emily screamed, dropping her fork as she stared at the frosted glass. There, pressed against the pane, was a handprint, but it wasn't human. The fingers were too long, the nails sharp and claw-like. "What the hell is that?" Mark shouted, jumping to his feet. The family huddled together, their hearts pounding as the knocking grew more frantic, coming from all sides of the cabin. The windows rattled, the doors shook, and then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The silence was deafening. "We need to get out of here," Sarah whispered, clutching Tommy to her chest. Mark nodded, grabbing the car keys. "Everyone, to the car, now!" They moved quickly, bundling up in their coats and boots. But as Mark opened the door, they were met with a blinding blizzard. The snow was coming down so hard, they could barely see a foot in front of them. "We'll never make it in this," Mark said, slamming the door shut. "We'll have to wait it out." The family retreated to the living room, where the fire was still burning. But as they sat down, they noticed something strange. The grandfather clock, which had been ticking steadily all evening, had stopped. The hands were frozen at midnight, and then the lights went out. The room was plunged into darkness, the only light coming from the dying embers of the fire. Emily screamed as she felt something brush against her leg, and Tommy began to cry. "Stay calm," Mark said, though his voice was shaking. "We'll get through this." But then they heard it, a low, guttural growl coming from the shadows. The fire suddenly flared up, casting an eerie glow across the room. And there, standing in the corner, was a figure. It was tall, its body twisted and unnatural, its skin pale and cracked like old porcelain. Its eyes glowed a sickly yellow, and its mouth was stretched into a grotesque smile, revealing rows of jagged teeth. Who are you?" Sarah stammered, clutching Tommy tighter. The figure tilted its head, its smile widening. "I am the Crampus," it hissed, its voice like nails on a chalkboard. "And you have been naughty." Before anyone could react, the creature lunged forward, its claws slashing through the air. Mark swung the fireplace poker, but it passed right through the creature as if it were made of smoke. Emily screamed as the Krampus grabbed Tommy, lifting him into the air. The boys' cries echoed through the cabin as the creature turned toward the door. "No!" Sarah shouted, lunging forward, but the Krampus was too fast. It disappeared into the blizzard, taking Tommy with it. The family was left in stunned silence, the weight of what had just happened sinking in. They searched the cabin, the surrounding woods, but there was no sign of Tommy or the Krampus. The next morning, the storm had passed and the sun rose over the snow-covered landscape. The Frost family was found by a search party huddled together in the cabin, their faces pale and haunted. They never spoke of what happened that night, and Tommy was never found. But every Christmas Eve, as the clock strikes midnight, the Frost family hears the faint sound of footsteps outside their door, and the chilling laughter of the Krampus echoing through the woods. This story is a work of fiction, created to entertain and thrill. While it draws on folklore and myth, it is not intended to promote or endorse any particular beliefs. Remember, the holidays are a time for joy and togetherness, so make sure to stay safe, be kind, and keep the spirit of the season alive. Happy holidays, and may your nights be merry and bright and free of Krampus